So I don't believe in God, not God the Lord or God the Father or even God the Mother, God the Creator, God the Judge. The idea of God as this all-powerful old man in the sky started unraveling for me around second grade in Sunday school, learning about the Ten Commandments. I didn't even get past the first one. You shall have no other God before me, for your God is a jealous God. Wait, went my 7-year-old brain. There are other gods for him to be jealous of? Now, it would be years before it occurred to me that that line about jealousy actually kind of made God look petulant. But it was that lesson, that Sunday school lesson, that started me pulling at the string that would eventually unravel the notion of monotheism and then the notion of theism. I don't believe in God. So I'm here today to talk to you about God. And the irony of ironies, the reason I, a non-believer, am talking to you, fellow Unitarian Universalists, many of whom I know are also non-believers, is that first commandment. Many years after that Sunday school lesson, decades after that Sunday school lesson, I've decided the first commandment is kind of right. In her book, Marriage and Other Acts of Charity, Kate Braestrup, a UU minister who serves as the chaplain to the Maine game wardens, writes about how she got sort of suckered into being her 13-year-old daughter's class parent during the month that the lesson was sex ed. Since she was a minister, the teacher told her, Braestrup could talk about values. So Braestrup wrote this on the chalkboard. Nothing matters more than blank. Filling in that blank was hard, the kids discovered. So hard that one of them eventually asked if there was going to be a test. No, Braestrup assured them, there's no test. But you will probably spend the rest of your life not only answering this question, but also figuring out how to live your life according to what your answer turns out to be. Once you've filled in the blank, this sentence will become, in effect, your working definition of God. I don't think she's necessarily right about all of that. We could spend our lives thinking about how to fill in that blank, but we might not. It is so much easier not to. Not to think about it, that is. It's not easy to avoid filling in the blank. It might be impossible to not fill in the blank. But filling it in without thinking about it, that is a snap. And then whatever unconscious answer we filled in becomes our working definition of God, of what matters to us most. And whether we've thought about it or not, it becomes the guide to how we live our lives, what we make a priority, who we make a priority. And that's why I'm here to talk about God, because I think Braestrup is right in this. We all fill in that blank. And the way we fill it in is essentially our working definition of the God we put before all others. And if we're going to put one God ahead of all others, shouldn't we do our best to make sure it's the God we want it to be? If we can't help but answer Braestrup's question, if we can't help but fill in that blank, then we should answer with intention, not by default. For Braestrup, the answer is this. Nothing matters more than love. It is an answer that she drew from 3 simple words in John's gospel. God is love. That's a whole theology in 3 words, she writes. The practical application of that theology, God is love, is nearly as simple. Be as loving as you can, as often as you can, for as many people as you can, for as long as you live. Why should you do this? Because. Now, love here doesn't necessarily have the meaning we would usually give it. It isn't romantic love or parental love. We're not just romantic love or parental love. It is more encompassing than that. Braestrup's three-word theology rests on one of the Greek concepts of love, agape, which she found a definition for that to be to earnestly desire the achievement of wholeness by the beloved. So for Braestrup, nothing matters more than the earnest desire for the achievement of wholeness by the beloved. God is love. That's good, but it's still kind of passive for my taste. As feminist theologian Mary Daly asked, why indeed must God be a noun? Why not a verb, the most active and dynamic of all? God as a noun fails to convey that God is being. God as verb can transcend that conception of God as creator or Lord or judge that you tend to reject. But God as verb, Daly wrote, is courageous participation in being. It isn't love as something we observe. It is doing love. So instead of God is love, love is God. Or even better, loving is God. It's still a simple theology. It's just not an easy one. For many reasons, not the least of which is this. When we desire the wholeness of the beloved, who do we mean by the beloved? Because, other people, they're hard. We're hard to take sometimes. Keep in mind, we're all other people. Maybe even a lot of times. In some cases, practically all the time. But as we heard from today's reading from the webinar on transgender inclusion, if beloved means anyone, it kind of needs to mean everyone. When Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of beloved community, he didn't call us to build a beloved community. He hoped for, envisioned the beloved community, something all of humanity could find its way into. If love is God, our theology and faith push us to do our part to build that community, even if, especially because it will be home to not only those we love in the traditional easy sense, but to people whose wholeness we hope for, even if we don't actually like them very much. And that isn't easy. It probably isn't even possible. But the point of faith isn't to do the easy things, or even to achieve some sort of divine perfection. The point of faith, the point of being human, may just be to try to get better and better at agape, at love. Faith is hard. It's hard because we are all blessedly flawed. But on the other hand, that is what makes us so darn interesting. And those flaws bring us to another reason love is God is not an easy theology. This is not a monotheistic faith. Love is not the only God. There are lots of gods, a whole pantheon of gods, and they are all jealous for our attention. There is selfishness and ego and wanting the best cookies and anger and hate and fear. Or even the more benevolent gods of family, friends, financial security, comfort, and maybe the most insidious gods, apathy, indifference, complacency. Any one of those can fill in that blank in Braestrup's question. And the truth is, sometimes they do. We all sometimes get focused on our own lives or grievances. So used to the world as it is, rather than as it could be, should be. Even if we want to think love is the thing that matters most, we forget or get distracted. And that's what I mean when I say that I've come around to the idea that the first commandment is kind of right. Our gods are all jealous gods. And they only prosper through our words, our actions. Love is God. Loving is God. If we want it to be, if we make it, live as if it were. Maybe not all the time, but in as many places, toward as many people, and as often as we possibly can. These gods that I'm talking about, they're of our making. That doesn't make them powerless. Love acted upon creates more love, more joy, more hope. We decide that that is what matters more than anything else. Love is a thriving God. It's just the same is true of hate and fear and indifference. As UUs, we don't have a creed. Kathy talked last week about the call that has been put out for the development of a UU theology. For us, a theology needs to be aspirational and hopeful. We may give substance to these gods, but we don't have to make God in our image. Let us instead see God in the image of who we hope to be. We are taking time at the end of each reflection on Sundays to open it up for a bit of a discussion. So I will give you, I guess, Kate Braestrup's question. What matters most is blank, or nothing matters more than blank. Or share with us your thoughts on love as a guiding principle in a theology and how maybe we can live that. We'll approach this the same way we did joys and concerns. Raise your hand, pop something into the chat box, and you will be called upon to share.
You might have any insights to add this morning to
Like
Dad's wonderful sermon. I've just really definitely taken by it, and lots of good reminders in there about how easy it is for us to sort of be following something we don't realize we're following, that we're holding up and valuing something with our actions that we don't even realize we're doing. I see Bruce is raising his hand. So Bruce, I'll.
One of the things that surprised me is when I learned the Ten Commandments is thou shalt have no other gods before me, period. I never learned the other part that Chad mentioned, that I think it was that because I'm a jealous God or whatever it was. I never heard that, which totally changes my thinking about the first commandment. And it's interesting having what Chad said at the end of thou shalt have no other gods before me, for I am a jealous God. It totally changed my idea of what I have been taught in the Methodist Church, because I don't think they wanted us to think about other possible gods. They didn't want us at any time to question, oh, what other gods are there? That was downplayed until I went to college and I heard some people talk about that. So I was fascinated by that, and it really made me think about what is the impact on there. And then when you try to talk about all the other gods, the worst being apathy and indifference, that really made more sense when you add in, because I'm a jealous God, what are the other gods that I'm jealous of? So I thank you for that. I never heard the ending, so I really appreciate hearing that.
Well, and I will say to little Chad, anything that spoke of a pantheon of different gods. Sounded a little like superheroes in science fiction. So it was really a bad way to keep me in the church.
I want to add something to that. I'm just curious because I grew up Protestant, and I know you grew up, well, to a certain age, Catholic. Is that in the Catholic Bible and not in the Protestant? That's kind of interesting to me because Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's in the Protestant, it's in the standard 10 Commandments. So at least it was what I heard. Because, you know, at the time, sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but, you know, the people who were living that and coming up with the 10 Commandments, they were aware that there were all kinds of other gods that, you know, other folks were worshiping. So, I mean, it has that other meaning too, but it has a literal meaning. There were literally other gods on their radar that, that, you know, they knew they could worship.
Well, I just found that very interesting. So, I mean, because there are some differences. I know we were talking last night at Coffee House a little bit about differences between what, oh no, wait, maybe that was Covenant Group yesterday. And we were talking the differences like what Catholics grew up with and what Protestants. So you think about just within Christianity and then you go to the other great religions, etc. It's very interesting. So that's kind of an aside. And so I'm done for now.
I see Jamie has got something to say, and then Tom after that. So Jamie.
Yes, thanks. To me, I think relationships is the thing that I value most. And I think that gives room to include not only love, to act in a loving way, to make sure you're in, as we say, right relationship with someone, that you have a good emotional connection, but that also conflict, there's room for conflict in there. And I think that's very important. And so relationships to me also includes the ability to work through conflict and to come back together again in what feels like a more positive relationship. Although I don't think you can have a truly complete relationship with someone without conflict and without the way to find a way to resolve it.
Tom, I see you have your hand up, so you're already unmuted. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just wanted to say that it was an interesting way to look at it, because when you look at what are the other gods that could compete with love, and he started listing them off, and it sounded almost like the 7 deadly sins. And it's an interesting way to look at sins as something that competes with what you should be doing, or what you should be focusing on. So the greed or the sloth maybe being the apathy that he was taught, that is maybe the worst of all. But so that was just an interesting way to think about it. I don't know that I've ever quite considered the 7 deadly sins as things that are taking you away from what you should be focusing on. So.
And I see Norma put in the chat, I agree, love matters most. As you said, all the other emotions that creep in. It is, although I have never been a Catholic, I have admired devout Catholic nuns. I see Jan or Becca, I'm not sure who, has their hand up over at that household.
Hello. So I was just thinking about it, and well, in the context of the past few months, I really feel that a lot of people have been, well, awakened to the fact that they were prioritizing comfort over, like other people's lives, to be quite honest. And I realized I as well was prioritizing my own comfort. Maybe not it was the most important thing, but certainly it was, you know, it was high up there, and realizing that my actions and the way that I was moving towards didn't align with who I wanted to become, and being able to take a moment, reflect on that, and realize that, you know, my personal comfort, although it would be fantastic to be comfortable, everyone would prefer that. I think there's a lot more a lot more work to do, and we can't in this moment we can't rest until everyone is allowed to breathe, go to the grocery store, you know, these basic things that we feel apathy to others about because we don't have that experience. But certainly it was an awakening to me that these comforts were not the most important thing in the world.
I see Lynn.
As Chad was talking, I was remembering the biblical prohibition on false idols. And I wonder if that's about worshiping the wrong things that are less important or could get you into trouble.
And I definitely had that admonition in mind when I was writing. And I'm not enough of a biblical scholar to know, but it might actually be in the same section of the Bible.